Good evening, everybody. It is fabulous to see so many people here. We have parents from the pre-prep, we have parents who have not yet joined the school, all the way through to parents from, for children in the sixth form, which is wonderful. And Simon and I are delighted to be able to have this opportunity to have a chat,
yes.
Cover the questions and topics that you have sent in, hopefully. And then we'll go from there.
Yes,
Anything more you want to add?
well, thank you for your questions. Good questions, and we've been through them. And what we're going to do is we sort of weave them into a bit of a presentation. There will be space for questions at the end, but we're going to try and sort of get through the different themes. And these are the themes that came up. Identity and individuality in regards to the education that we offer here. Innovation in learning. AI, technology, and the human touch. Real-world readiness, and then, at the end, tougher questions about education. We should look forward to that one.
Thank you,
so we'll go through each of those sections, and we'll frame the questions that you've asked, and then there'll be space for questions at the end.
Absolutely.
Would you like the first question, Mrs. North?
Yes, please.
Okay, so, all right. Okay, so identity and individuality is the first section, and the first question is, what does an individualised approach mean to you in the context of education?
Thank you, Simon, for that great
Pleasure.
question. I think anybody who's met me already will know that I talk about the individual a lot, because that is what it's all about here. From the moment your child meets Simon or I on a visit to the school, what we're interested in is getting to know your child, what they're reading, what they're thinking, what they want to be when they're older. What we're not worrying about at that point is what grades they've been given, what scores they've got. We're not worried about that because we're interested in them, what they're thinking, and what their potential is, because they're individual. And they all bring with them different worries, different experiences, different backgrounds. And when they come and join us, what I would say is that we have 550, 600 free spirits in this school. They're all different, and we love the fact that they bring those differences with them. And it's our job to nurture them, to give them opportunities and space to explore more about themselves, find out what makes them tick, and then take them on that journey from when they're little all the way through those glorious adolescent years and out the other end as young adults, ready to embrace the challenges that the world brings. So that's what it is for me. That's the individuality that I see. What about you, the prep school?
Well, it's yeah, you're absolutely. What we're doing is we're responding to the individuals in the classroom and around the school. I suppose one thing we work on really hard with the teachers is we use adaptive teaching. We talk about, which in old money sort of we used to call differentiation, and that's sort of how you adapt and respond to who's in front of you. And you either do that in the context of the learning moment in the room, or you can do it with the work that's being set, how you stretch and challenge the children. This is something we work really hard on as a team. We do lots of kind of CPD sessions on how we adapt to everyone in the room and in the space. But knowing them as people and in relationships, I think what's really, really important is that tutor relationship, that teacher relationship, and the house relationship, which I know is absolutely central to what you do up here.
Completely. I'll just wax lyrical about the houses for a bit. The houses, when the children come into the senior school, they are placed in a house, and I always say to parents that their identity first and foremost is as a member of a particular house. All the houses are glorious, all run by different people with different personalities that inevitably influence the children in their house. But the way that we structure the houses with the HM, the house mistress or master, the assistant resident in the house, the matron, all these people get to know your child really well. And I would say the matron is the absolute wonderful lady of every house, and every child who, when they go through and remember their experience in the school, will remember their matron. She's the lady who finds their socks, the lady who makes them a cake on their birthday, the lady who makes them toast at break, the lady who picks them up when they're feeling low. It's the reason she can do that, and the reason the HM can do it, is because they know your child as an individual. And yes, they'll have a character as a house, but they're all different within it. So the house system is really, really precious to us. And we mix up our day pupils and our boarders deliberately to make sure that there's really good integration between a child who is boarding all the time or a child who lives down the road in Framlingham. And that means that friendships are made across all those different dynamics, which is wonderful.
So they obviously come into the prep school when they're very little, and I think there's a parent even here who's got one coming in September in reception.
Yeah.
And so sometimes at that level to be adaptive is very easy. We've got Jo, who's the expert in the room. Don't worry, Jo, I'm not going to put you on the spot just yet. But Jo's our head of pre-prep, and so she talks about responding to sort of child-led interests and to the sort of the dynamic of the group and then affecting her pedagogy accordingly. So that's sort of what we mean by adaptive. But it begs the question, which was one of yours, is that if we do adapt so much, this is for you, Louise.
Oh, thank you.
How do we reconcile individuality, as described, with structure, rules, and academic standards?
Yeah, so I think, we're not a school like Bedales. Some of you will know Bedales is a school where there's an awful lot of freedom, it's very relaxed. You can choose whether you're going to pop into a lesson or not. You can choose what you're going to study. We're not at that point. That's not what we're about. Our individuality is allowing your child to develop their interests, pursue their passions, and take initiatives and take the initiative in various different things in any way they want. But it all is done in the context of we're preparing your children for their adult world and the world into which they're going to go, wherever they're going to live. There are boundaries, there are expectations, there are rules. And so we have those expectations in the school. We have expectations of how we're going to treat each other, how we're going to adhere to, yes, wear your uniform and wear it well. And we try and turn it into a positive rather than you can't do this and you can't do that and you can't do that. But there are certainly, there's always got to be a structure and high expectation both in the classroom, beyond it, in your interactions as you walk around the campus. Holding a door for somebody is as important as, doing really well in your maths lesson. It all matters. And I think that they understand that. I think sometimes when there are decisions to be made about sanctions, if somebody has done something wrong, sometimes children will come and say to me, Mrs. North, I think that was really unfair, or they might talk to Mr. Hastings about it. But we always talk it through, and there's always a rationale for why we've made a decision that we've made. And I think on the whole, I would like to think that the pupils understand that and they embrace it. But their individuality is really important to each of them. And I've got so many stories I could tell you about different children who have pursued their particular path, and maybe I'll mention those in a minute.
Yeah, one of the things we're really pushing very hard at the prep is values-led education. Yeah. I really, really believe strongly in that. And so a lot of my assemblies and a lot of the stuff we weave through via our leadership is how you sort of celebrate the good. And we're always looking for ways to celebrate how ambitious they are with their choices, taking opportunities, with their academic work, with the co-curricular. So we sort of celebrate the good as best we can. We look to stretch and challenge. I know that's been another massive theme for Lucy on the academic side, and how do you, and that is an individualised approach, because what stretch means for one could be very different for another. And then we use a targeted intervention and support, and often one thinks of sort of learning support in that case, and it could be an individual session or it could be a group booster session that we might do if someone just needs a bit of help with their maths. But we also use intervention not just for academic boost, but for stretch on the things they may be passionate in. So, if they're really, really, really into cricket, then we look to do those individualised sessions with them. Hockey. There's a boy called JJ. If you've seen him play hockey in Year 7, it's quite something. But he is so, he's so up there with it that we have to, using Lisa, he has to have these sort of additional one-on-one sessions. So it's not just about bringing up, but it's also about stretching the top. Yeah. Do you have any other examples?
I do. I could go on forever about my examples of individuals, but I suppose I could take Catherine, who's one of my Year 13s, as an example of somebody who's joined the school with a real talent as a vocalist, as a singer. She's got the most extraordinary voice, but she's also had to balance all of her her academic work, and we've worked really, really hard with her to make sure she's settled, that when she's boarding, she's got time to rest as well as shoot off to Ipswich to sing at Ipswich Minster, or shoot here and there to be recorded for the BBC, whatever she's doing. So there's an individual sort of approach there, but helping her to maintain all the things around that. I also think of Katie, who is one of my Year 12 girls, and Katie came into the school knowing who she was, I think, right from the beginning, and that was something that we really wanted to celebrate. She has a passion for design technology. She has a passion for, well, right now, Dungeons and Dragons that we were talking about the other day. But for her, what we do, which is a really wonderful thing to enable people to pursue a specific passion, is an HPQ and EPQ qualifications, and that's a higher project qualification for Year 10s, and then an extended project qualification you do in Year 12. And this is above and beyond your subjects that you're studying for your A-levels or your GCSEs, but it's something that allows you to pursue a passion. And I think I'm right in saying that what Katie did was she designed and created a piece of armour. But this was, the stimulus for this was a piece of armour that she had seen in a computer game that she had been playing. And she'd seen that and thought, oh, I'm going to make that. And then she designed it and she made it, which was just awesome. Completely sort of very individual. Who knew that there was this kind of thing that you could do? But she did it. And I think the opportunity to do the HPQ gave her that outlet, which is wonderful. I could go on, but I better not.
Louise, I warn you, because I'm going off script already. But what about, so in a previous life, I worked in a senior school much like this and looked after all sorts of different children with abilities. But those elite performers, or the ones who are super busy, because as we know, as you all know as parents, the children get very, very busy here. What if they're overstretched? What then? What if they are, I mean, certainly I've looked after sports persons who the pressure of performance can have quite a debilitating effect on them socially. So what do we do then?
That's a really good question. It's as if you planted that.
How do we?
I have a really good answer. But this has always been a challenge in schools like ours, where there are so many different things that the children are encouraged to do and take part in. And at the beginning of this academic year, we had a discussion about the well-being and mental health of some of our really busy pupils, and how I was really concerned that actually the pressure that they were under was having a detrimental effect on their well-being. They were still performing, both academically and in their sport or their music, but actually it was taking its toll. And so we always try and navigate these things really carefully for the children by taking any conflict away from them, and we'll work out how their week's going to look, rather than making them choose between a one-to-one session and an academic hub. But we've now sort of put that into a more formal policy, which is all about helping those children who are elite in whichever way, or they're pursuing an elite pathway, to help them work out how they're going to manage it all. And if something has to give, well, it'll give, and we'll work with them, sit down and say, well, actually, this week, just too much. So we're going to take this out and this out. That's how we do it. Yeah. And I think we do it pretty well. Yeah. But it's something we have to be always conscious of, because you don't always see it on the surface with the children, because they want to please. But that goes back to knowing them as an individual. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, it does. That was section 1. Right, section 2 is innovation. I think they're with us. Is innovation in learning. Yes. So, what does innovation? That word is used a lot in education, I hasten to add. What does that look like at Framlingham? And the question from the parents was beyond just technology. Yeah. Well, I think for me, innovation is about it's making change. Moving away from maybe the traditions and habits that we have, whatever they might be. And I think that it's also about having a growth mindset. And I think that we at Framlingham, we do have that, and we instill that in the children, that we are open to criticism, constructive criticism, to looking at things differently, taking different perspectives. And if something needs to be changed, then we will do it. But we never make a decision to do something like that if we can't justify how it will benefit the children. Because sometimes we can get carried along and think, oh, that would be much better if we changed that bit of the timetable. Well, who's that going to benefit? Actually, it's the staff rather than the pupils. So I obviously do need to look after our staff, but we need to prioritise the experience that the children are having and how do those decisions help them. So, you know, I think about well-being, I come back to that again, and in terms of innovating, when I arrived, it was early on in my time here, it feels a long time ago now, 2019, but we looked at well-being and how we're structuring the day for the pupils, and have they got enough time just to breathe, you take the lid off the pressure cooker. We introduced a well-being period in the day at the senior school where, and you might think, wow, that's quite irresponsible to give 400 children the choice to do anything they want for 45 minutes. But we do it, and they embrace that. So it's about, you choose what you do, you stay on the campus, mind you, and you can go to sleep, you can go for a walk, you can read a book, you can do some prep, you could do some mindfulness, sit under a tree. I talked about forest bathing the other day in assembly, and I highly recommend it, but I won't go down that rabbit hole. So we brought in a change to the way we look at well-being. We talk about flow, the children all striving towards finding their flow, that balance between comfort and challenge. And there's always got to be that challenge there, and we encourage them to look for that. And I think that's been really successful. We can't do enough to support our pupils with their well-being and their mental health. And that we'll come back to that later, I'm sure. Other examples of innovation, I would say when I arrived, we looked at the prep school. I'll give this to you in a minute, Simon, and we took out the common entrance from the prep school fairly quickly. We explained to parents why that was. It wasn't fit for purpose. You're judging a child and whether they can reach 55% in an exam at the age of 11 or 12 is not a suitable way of judging their potential, whether they're going to be ready for the senior school. It's just, and most senior schools now embrace that as well. So we took that out and we moved to the 7, 8 and 9 curriculum, which has been a really positive shift.
Yeah. I think when we say innovation, I think looking at a curriculum is definitely a way schools can innovate, and particularly independent schools. We don't have as many restrictions on you know what we can do with our curriculum. That's a great excitement. So I think that I was one of the reasons that was one of the first things when I was investigating the prep school that I noticed the 7, 8, 9 curriculum, and you don't have there's no ISEB. I hope no one had to go through that. My children did last year, which is a test that's put upon them in year 6, and it pumps out a number, and that number basically says you can go to that school, you can't go to that one, you can go to that one. And they're very, very young at that age, I think, to put that sort of pressure on them. And we'll talk a little bit more about how I think you can subtly apply pressure within a school. But yeah, no test at year 6, no common entrance. And I think that notion of the sort of the terminal is a horrible way to say it, but the terminal assessment, the final exam, and the way education is looking at how you assess and continual assessment is completely different. So there is a great sort of freedom that we can do in that 7, 8, 9. We really believe in the skills of project, which we're just adapting at the moment. We're going to do it slightly differently next year, but essentially children doing a deep dive on a project and having to present their findings and the format of that presentation. We really believe in the capacity for this to be sort of interdisciplinary, so across different subjects, and the skills of standing up and presenting and kind of giving your ideas. I think they can learn that from a really, really young age. So yeah, I think when we say innovation, I think really you've got to think about how is it creative and how is it engendering creativity. I don't know if you wanted to go on about Key Stage 4.
I'll mention it briefly. We're currently looking at our Key Stage 4 curriculum, the GCSE chunk, and I've written about this before, sort of expressing my disdain with the whole system at the moment, where children are expected to, at a time when their brains are just exploding, their hormones are all over the place, and they are developing in lots of ways, we're asking them to cram their brains full of maybe 10 subjects worth of information and then download it into their GCSE papers, which some of you are parents of children doing that right now. And I worry that again, as a judge of whether a child is going to thrive in a sixth form environment, I worry that some schools will set a bar and say, if you don't get your grade sixes, you cannot come to the school. If you fail your maths and you get less than a 4, you're not going to manage and move forward, and it'll be a disaster. And every year we see children who come just after their GCSE results. They've been told you can't come back to their school, and they come and talk to me. And it goes back to that thing I said at the beginning. They sit on my sofa and they tell me about themselves and what they want to do and their passions. And we have had the most amazing stories of children who have come and have flourished because they've had belief. You know, somebody's looking at them in more than just looking at the grades on a piece of paper. Now assessment is important and GCSEs are important, and we're not getting rid of GCSEs, but we are considering potentially having different pathways, a pathway where you do study 9 or 10 GCSEs, a pathway where you study fewer, and then you have the opportunity to maybe look at one particular aspect of maybe a career path. Maybe it's technology, it might be environmental. We've got lots of really interesting ideas, and we will be consulting with parents next year just to sort of develop our thinking. So we're not rushing into anything, but we're doing what lots of schools are thinking about. What do we do with GCSEs? Lots of schools are waiting for the government to say, do this with GCSEs. But I suspect it's going to take a while. So we're just having a look at that right now. And as with everything we do, we're really thorough, and we don't rush into anything. But it's on our minds, for sure.
Yeah, and you and I have both taught in IB schools,
yep.
and that sort of baccalaureate-style education has got massive value in it, particularly in the way different subjects can work together and not work in isolation. And I think that's the fundamental bit that's changing, is the realisation you don't just have to study a range, you try and weave them together. And how. Next question. How do... In fact, I'm going to ask you this question. Good. Sorry. You can see we're well rehearsed.
You can go first.
Yes.
So, Simon, how do we encourage risk-taking and creativity in both staff and pupils?
So, we've had a lovely theme in the prep school this year called Yes Let's, which came in sort of accidentally in I think the second assembly I did, and I got the whole school to say Yes Let's to different silly ideas I was giving them. You know, who wants to go and fly a kite? They say Yes Let's. Who wants to run a marathon across the desert? That was yes. I said Yes Let's to that. Who wants to do more French? And they'd say Yes Let's. And then this thing has kind of taken hold really, and it's just about being open to new ideas, to what the people in front of you are suggesting, to opportunities. And really, we used to say, a bit like differentiation, we used to say growth mindset, but that's sort of not as... But Yes Let's is just about being open to stuff. And I think by doing that, there's a certain amount of kind of risk-taking that's sort of baked into that idea. One of them very fondly said to Mr. Jones, "Sir, can we bring our pets to school?" And the answer was, "Yes, let's." So we had a pet blessing ceremony.
How many pets did you have?
I don't know. We had lots of dogs.
You had a parrot, Birdie the parrot.
Yeah, we had 2 tortoises, a cat, and yes. So no, but the point is that I think that's a really positive thing with youngsters, particularly that prep age. It's just about being open-minded to stuff and then following it through. Yeah. But I think one thing I really believe is that creativity is not just the thing that happens in drama. It's not just the thing that happens in art. It's the thing that has to be weaved into all of the teaching. I think you can be very creative in maths, not I hasten to add. But I think that's something, again, that we're looking at, is encouraging the teachers to take risks in the way that they teach. And, good questioning, encouraging critical thinking, getting the children to kind of make connections between subjects, debate and perform. There's a great risk. We had a really charming performance the other night, Lambda showcase, and so all the little ones were up playing piano or doing their drama. And one girl really struggled with her clarinet, and it was squeaking, and it was a horrible moment because we all wanted to kind of help her, but she sort of had to help herself. And she was very vulnerable in that moment, we felt. And but that pressure of performance, in a performance that she'd volunteered to do, there's a great risk in that.
She was amazing.
And she got through it.
No tears. She was great. She was really good. I think that when we think about creativity, I think part of the reason we are as we are here is because this entire county is full of creative people. There's so many artists, musicians, entrepreneurs, small business owners who have to be creative. And I am absolutely convinced that that influences us as a school. And the pupils within it, you know, because many of their parents are those creative people I've just mentioned. And so they come in with that creativity in all things. I had a child once, not so long ago, who sat on my sofa and she said, Mrs. North, I can see maths everywhere. And I said, that's fabulous. Angles, Mrs. North, probability. And I thought, this is amazing, you know, this is just wonderful. Anyway, so I think we have, it's just innate within us that we are creative, and we are also confident enough to take risks, I think. Ollie, as a Year 9 boy, came to me with his laptop and said, Mrs. North. I said, yes. He said, I need to show you something. I said, okay. And he sat down, opened his laptop and said, bees, Mrs. North, we need bees. I need £500. I'm going to buy the hive second hand. I've got a friend who's going to come and train us, and I've got some old kit. And Mr. Newman says he'll help. So we now have bees. We've had bees for the last 3-4 years. Yeah, this is our 4th year with bees. And at the end of last term, there were no bees because the wasps had got them. And we now have 4 swarms of bees because Mr. Newman and Ollie have procured the bees. If they hear there's a swarm, they're there with their gear on, collecting the bees. But this is because Ollie wanted to have bees. And it's been an amazing success. We have prep school children who come and see the bees. I love it. But it's the freedom and creativity that they believe they can come and have an idea and we'll make it happen. Amy last year created our well-being book for the pupils. That was all driven by her passion for looking after herself and her friends. And she created this book. We had it produced and every pupil in the school received one. So it's that initiative and that's confidence. And the more they see other people doing it, the more they will do it themselves. So I think it's there within them. And it's just encouraging them to feel confident enough to bring an idea to the table, not just to me, to their HM, their teacher, whatever it might be. Have I answered that question?
You have, yeah. So section 3. If you turn to page... the question is, how are we using... Yes. I'm afraid it's still you, Louise.
Yes,
how are we using AI in the classroom and in school? How are we using AI?
That's a fabulous question.
Very good.
So, I will in a minute ask Lucy Manning to talk a little bit more about this because she is our AI guru. But what I would say is that we know we are preparing our young people for an AI-infused world, if you like. It's not something to deny its existence. It's not something to be scared of. It's there, and we're already using it in the classroom. We're already unwittingly using it sometimes. So that's my feeling about AI. And we work really closely with, as teachers, we have lots of different sessions where we share our experiences of AI and what we're using in the classroom, what works, what doesn't work, what we need to be wary of. And this is all comes from Lucy, who arranges these little mini insets, if you like. And we're also talking to the children about the sort of ethical and responsible way to use AI. So it's not that you want to use ChatGPT to write your essay, because that takes away from you the opportunity to learn. And our children love to learn. So they're understanding, A, it's plagiarism, don't do it. But B, it's not going to be very good anyway, and you lose that experience of learning and researching and going on that journey. But ChatGPT can help you to plan something. It helped us to plan this evening, didn't it, Simon?
Might have done.
So it has its uses. Administratively, within the school, we're gradually growing in how we use it. We know that, for example, I sometimes use one platform to turn a text that I have to read into a podcast, so I can listen to it in the car. It's really great. It's fantastic. We can use it for taking minutes, although it doesn't always understand every accent that it picks up. So we're gradually getting there. I think Lucy's analogy would be, it's like we're not going all guns blazing. We're not sending fireworks into the sky saying, wow, this is what we're doing with AI, because we're going steadily through it. It's a bit like a garden, right? We're planting the seeds, we're watering them, we're seeing them come through, and we're gradually flourishing with our use of AI, but we're not, it's not going to take over. It's not about replacing us. It's about enhancing the teaching and the learning for the children. And, you know, they're the experts. I mean, they are way ahead in some ways with what they use, but so it's teaching them to use it in the right way. Is that an okay answer?
Yeah, just a very good answer. Lucy, you're not off the hook yet. The only thing I might bring you in on is, because we've talked about an individualised approach in the classroom, and I think there are some very clever apps that we use with spelling and reading, and particularly with and even with pupils with SEND. Do you want to jump in?
Yes. So that's one of the most amazing things I think that we can use AI to do, is really make sure that we are tailoring what we're doing with individual children in the classroom. We do have these platforms, we do have Sparks Maths and Spelling Shared and all these kind of games that the children can play, but we absolutely understand it has to be a really, really careful balance, but it's also allowing us opportunities to, for example, Louise was speaking earlier about the podcast tool, and I found really, really beneficial, particularly some of our pupils with dyslexia that need to encounter a text in a different way. And I've actually seen, since I've started using it, very briefly, but I've seen some pupils really start to engage in their prep tasks and understand what they're doing. Also using it in a creative way in our lessons, particularly some of the creative art tools that we're able to use. Even with our Year 3 pupils, they've been writing descriptions of dragons, and we've been using the AI as teachers to bring those images to life for them. And they see the magic in it at that age. And I think as they're getting older, I've even been using it in Year 9, they're doing their projects at the moment, creating logos for businesses, and they're seeing the importance of really good prompting and the ethics of it too, and when it's about the process of learning, when that's really important, and when AI is just giving us a product and cutting out that learning that's really, really important.
Thank you, Lucy. Yeah, it's brilliant.
Thanks, Lucy.
Lucy's done lots of presentations on this recently to staff, because Lucy's got a cross-site role, so she leads on teaching and learning in both the prep and the senior, which I think is a massive strength to make sure there's consistency from the way the staff are using this. And you did a great presentation to the governors as well, who wanted all of your resources for themselves, I think, at one point. So thank you, Lucy. And the next question is, because if we are using all these things, and we are using AI as a sort of assistive partner, how do we ensure pupils keep their uniquely human strengths in a tech-rich world?
Yeah, and I suppose that is in part the fact that we celebrate them as individuals and the interests and passions that they have. I think that's part of it. I think it's also the way we role model our use of tech and AI, and with tech at the senior school, those of you who are already parents here, from Year 9, 10, 11, their phones, which is the key struggle that we all have with our teenagers, is their phones are away in their yonder pouches, sealed, and they can't use them. It means that they look up and out far more during the day, and they get them back at the end of the day. So it's about role modelling, good use of tech to enhance our learning and enhance our lives, but also, look at where we are. I mean, we are and the prep, the most exquisite environment, and we want them to be out there, enjoying it, whether they're playing sport, whether they're just having a walk, whether they're watching the cricket, forest bathing. I said to them all the other day, go out into the woods and just hug a tree. It's a Japanese, it goes back to, it's a Japanese, ancient Japanese thing. I mean, it's just like sunbathing, but it's forest instead.
Breathing
so rather
in
than the
nature.
sun, you're finding your center, your core, mindfulness in the forest. Hug a tree. It's amazingly powerful. That's what forest bathing is. Okay. Anyway, I told them to do that and they all disappeared into the woods. It was quite funny. I had Rendlesham on Instagram all forest bathing at one point, which I thought was hilarious. So it's about, it's common sense, isn't it? And it's also, I would say, this part is, everything we do with your children is about working with you, but especially when it comes to tech. And what you do at home, you know, you role model what you want your children to follow as well as we do. So if we work together, we can hopefully bring up a generation of young people who are not like this all the time or on their screens of one sort or another. And I think it's a team effort because it's a real battle. I wish it wasn't a battle because at the same time, tech is really positive and there are some really good things in there. But it's just about balance and role modelling and getting, you know, encouraging them to look up and out. And I think we do it. You know, now that we have those pouches in the senior school, that's really helped us. But it doesn't mean that when they're back with their phones or on the holidays, they're not glued to them. And that's where we have to ask our parents to keep going with it because it can be quite a battle. For the little ones, it's less so.
I mean, yes and no. I think you could say that it's easier in early years and prep because they don't have their screens. But I still think the question was about human strengths. So I think it's really important to celebrate the human strengths and what they're doing that is not on screens. I often think about celebrate the sustained endeavour because that is what they don't get. You know, they get instant gratification. That's why they like it. So you really champion stuff that they've had to work at, they've had to persevere at. They don't necessarily get success straight away. They maybe lose a match. They dust themselves off. They go again. And I think that's the stuff to really inculcate in the young. That as we know, to do well at something, you have to work at it and you have to apply time to it, really. So I think there's something in the alchemy there in the culture of a prep school. But you're right to touch upon the outdoors because it's, you know, what you can do is extraordinary outside with them, particularly when the weather's like this. We obviously have forest school and experiential learning outside. My favourite afternoon of the week is when Joe's with them on a Friday afternoon doing forest school. I always try and pop down and they're there, they're kind of weaving and they're all outdoors and there's something really magical about that awesome. You can really you know, harness and protect, I think, in the early years. Okay, we're on to section 4.
Okay.
You're doing very well.
Thank you. So are you.
How do we support, well, this is real world readiness.
Oh, yes.
Real world readiness.
Yes.
Okay, so how do we support pupils with careers, apprenticeships and life beyond university?
Great question. That's what it's all about, really, isn't it? It's whatever we're doing right now, it's all for the next step, whatever that might be. And I think the world is changing rapidly, as we all know, and the possibilities for your children when they leave school are already much broader than they were when we were at school. Well, I was at school and much younger people were at school. And so our job is to give them all the information that they need to be able to decide, you know, what direction am I going to go in? It used to be that if you didn't head to university after school, that was a failure, right? And it is so far from the truth. It's always been far from the truth, but right now what's happening is there's a shift. And we have children every year who leave us and go on to, some go straight into employment, not many, but 1 or 2. We have an increased interest in apprenticeships. We had 2 children last year went off and did apprenticeships, one with computer science and one was in, what was it? I had it written down, entrepreneurship of some sort, I think. We had 2 apprenticeships. We have some children who go on gap years, and sometimes those gap years extend because they've actually started a side hustle whilst they're here. And they decide, actually, I'm just going to spend my gap year exploring that. And then actually it becomes a business and they never go to university, or they might do, but it might be 10 years hence. You know, I have one boy in my mind, Will Llewellyn, who he left a couple of years ago, and he was developing a clothing business. And so his gap year took him to India, where he sourced the fabric that he wanted to use. He came back here to sell his boxers and his really cool shirts that he had made. And I think it's still going, you know, and wonderful. And I think he is heading to university, but that's a very valid route to go down as well. And in terms of universities, we are not a school that is worried about the number of Russell Group universities that our children go to. I am not worried where I come in a league table or if I don't even come in a league table at all, because it is not about that. It is about the children finding their path through. And they go off and do the most extraordinary things. And I jotted down a few of the courses from last year. We had ancient history at Leeds, criminology and forensic science, that's increasingly popular in Portsmouth, music production and music business, games design at Nottingham Trent, zoology at Bristol, fine art at UAL, it goes on and on. My favourite one is a couple of years ago, Henry Jackson, who was an extraordinary boy, really musical, very talented, and he went off and studied DJ practice and music production, and I think he's going to be in Ibiza, if not now. Give it a year. Henry's going to lead the way. But at the same time, his friend goes off to study law. I don't remember whether it's Oxford or Cambridge. But that's the breadth that we have here. And that is the wonderful thing about the school, I think. And the careers provision, going back to that, you know, we use Unifrog, which is a really good platform that parents have access to it as well. And that starts, you know, in the prep school, it starts and goes all the way through. And it's just sowing seeds of interest for the children in what they might be interested in. They'll change their minds half a dozen times. Some of them do change their minds half a dozen times in year 12, let alone all the way through. But that's fine. We encourage them to explore and dive into what might it be like to do this job or that job. Our links with industry and with our OF community, it's getting better and better. And there's been some organisational issues there, but we have quite a few OFs who mentor individuals. You know, they have those sort of individual arrangements where they will stay in touch with the child, meet them here, talk about where they're going, what they're thinking about doing. So, and we have a careers fair. I mean, we have business breakfast where we invite parents in and OFs in to talk to our pupils about the different careers that they have. We are doing a really big careers fair in October, which will then happen every year from this point on. When we've got lots of different industries coming in, we've got lots of different universities, apprenticeship information all coming, and year 8s upwards will be attending that at different points in the day, which is really exciting. So it's coming here to Framlingham, and you know that's really important to sort of put us out there and just show that there are so many possibilities. And you are all examples of the different possibilities that the children have. You know, it's a role modelling, you know, you're doing it. And it's about never saying that you can't do something or that's a bad idea. Or sometimes, occasionally we have a child who might say, well, my parents want me to do. And the question, you know, gently follows, well, what do you want to do? And if there's a disconnect, we'll have a chat and work our way through it. Because it needs to be your child, you know, who's pursuing what they want to do, even if sometimes you think, really? So that's how we do it. There's a lot that goes on with our careers, but we are very aware of the breadth of possibility for the children now, which is really exciting, but it can also be daunting. So.
And obviously, you know, careers is good. It's going to have much more onus in the senior school, but with at the prep, I think it's just about inspiring them. Yes. It's about showing them lots of different role models, lots of different careers, bringing in external speakers. We had Squash Faulkner, sort of extreme alpine something or other, mountaineer. She came in, they absolutely loved that. Yeah. You know, we've had choristers come in and sing to them. I think it's just showing them that absolute range so that they think the world is, you know, the world is open for them, and we want them to kind of dream big. So I think that's what I try and do with the youngsters. But life skills, Louise, because that's absolutely integral, because it did say life beyond university, and they're going to need skills. And I know that you've got a big focus on, and we both do, on how they present?
Yes. I think we talk about skills all the time in terms of the education that the children are receiving. We want them to deepen their knowledge. We want them to develop skills. These are the things that, I think people still call them soft skills. I don't know what's soft about them, but, it is all these really, really important things. And I'm sure I'm looking at plenty of employers here right now who would say, when you're looking at somebody who comes for an interview, yes, you'll have seen they've got various grades on their piece of paper, and they matter. But what actually also matters is that they can look you in the eye, they can shake your hand, they can think creatively, they can be challenged on the spot, they can think outside the box. Those skills are as valuable as somebody who has got those excellent grades. Now, we want both for our children. We want them to do as well as they possibly can in their academic work. And they do, primarily because they're happy and they're loving what they're doing, but at the same time they're developing those skills. And we start it in the prep, all the way through. You can learn how to collaborate when you're 3, and you can learn how to collaborate when you're 18. And some of the 3-year-olds are possibly better than the 18-year-olds, but but those things we embed the whole way through, I think.
Yeah.
And then we see it. I think the biggest test, and I may be jumping around here a little bit, is what they do with all of this when they're 25. The success of our education that we're offering here, we can measure it when they leave at 18. But when they are, past university or whatever, and they're working and they're living their life, how much of what they've learned here are they using, are they drawing on? And I think it's the skills that we give them that are really central to that. I could talk about there's a Learning for Life course that we do in Year 12, where they're learning lots of different skills, managing their money. In Year 13, we're offering things like how do you change a tyre on a car, through to cooking, all those things that you need. And your schools kind of forget about that in the hurly-burly if they're not careful, but we do a lot of that as well. I'll pause. I digressed a bit.
Well, you need to catch your breath because the final section is the hard one. This is tougher questions about education. Okay, so
Yes, okay.
Are we in danger of mollycoddling children and moving too slowly as a sector?
Well, yes. I think that, parents, all of us, are in danger. We are in danger. I don't know whether it's got worse. It possibly has since the C word, of mollycoddling our children and worrying about them, where they are, what they're doing, how they're feeling. So I think there's a lot of mollycoddling. But some of that's needed. So there's a balance, I think, between nurturing them, caring for them, making them feel that they belong, but also, going back to that other thing, allowing them to take risks, get things wrong, fall off the slide, hopefully not head first, make some mistakes too, because that's the only way that you learn and you develop the resilience that is so crucial. So I think yes is the answer, but I think we're all guilty of it. And, I still find my phone for my 20-year-old son, who's always in the same place when I do it. He's always in his room. And maybe he just leaves his phone there. I don't know. I hadn't thought about that. But, so I'm mollycoddling him too. And I need to let him go. But so I think schools need to work with parents you need to let them go and let us look after them and deal with some of the ups and downs. But you need to trust us that we're going to keep you informed and we're going to do it really well. Because sometimes it's a bit of a tango, isn't it? So we'll deal with some things and they'll come home to you and you'll deal with other things. But as long as we're still communicating, the parents and the school will get them through it, I think. Yeah. Over to you.
Well, I just wanted to pick up your theme of kind of grit and determination, which we talked about a little bit before, about sustained endeavour. Yeah. And I think I was actually talking to a parent just now about how busy the children are and how that step up into Year 3 in the prep school is that much busier with fixtures and concerts and this, that and the other. And I think there's something in I used that word alchemy before already, but there's something in that in a busy prep school where they're learning not necessarily to prioritise, because we may do a bit of that for them and with them, but they're learning, what's important, where their energies have to go, and a little bit of time management, multitasking, competition, failure, success, and there's so much that goes on in the week, and I think they're learning along that. It's a sort of subtle way of teaching them about how to cope with pressure. And I think there's some really deep learning in that is not mollycoddling actually, but it's supportive if they and when it gets a bit much, and there's support structures around them to help them with that. But I think there's some really, really important learning in there for them. Okay, the next question: what are the top 3? This is a hard one. What are the top 3 challenges today's pupils will face in 15 to 20 years?
Who asked that?
Yes.
Come on.
We haven't name and shamed yet, but and how are we preparing them?
Yes.
We put this to AI because we didn't know the answer, and AI said AI disruption. The irony.
Yeah.
It's me. AI disruption, global instability,
Yes.
and mental health.
Yes. And actually, I thought that was quite good, 15, 20 years hence. But who knows? This is the challenge, right? That we're preparing our children for a future that is uncertain. We don't know really what it's going to be like. We can hazard a guess. But what we can do is prepare them to embrace that uncertainty with confidence and with those skills that we were talking about, I think, so that they're not fazed when they don't know the answer, that they can draw on each other, draw on the lessons that they've learned from school in how to move forward and to navigate a challenge that may appear. But I do think the mental health thing we can do something about, and we are, and I don't see that getting any easier in the near future. I just worry enormously about how our adolescents in particular cope with pressures that are on them. So part of it is about building up their resilience, and but also it's really important to listen to them, because the challenges they're facing as teenagers are not challenges necessarily that I faced when I was a teenager. That was really awkward and difficult and moody, but I didn't go through some of the things that I see them going through. And so it's not to dismiss them as, oh, that's just nonsense, just get to grip and get on with it. It's not that. But I think there's a balance between the two. And we do a lot of work on well-being, mental health, looking after yourself, looking after others. And we keep evolving with that, and we will continue to evolve. There's a lot of support systems in the school, counsellors, we have a child psychologist, we have a wonderful med centre team, mental health trained house staff, and that actually brings me to one of the key things in all of this, which is the staff that we have in the school, who are really heavily invested in your children. And I think that's a massive contributor to looking after them and their mental health. So I think that's the thing that worries me. What more can we do? And again, I think it's working together. But the other bits, I think it's just about readying them for challenge.
Well, it's the whole education, isn't it? And
I think
it's,
so.
We've talked before, haven't we, about creating good people, good citizens, well-mannered, well-prepared, well-equipped, with all the stuff we've talked about this evening, so that they can face it when the going gets tough and when the pressure's on. I've talked a lot about pressure, but it's something I do believe in. And I did. I'm going to tell my running story. Sorry, but I did do a very silly run recently, which was across the Sahara Desert, as you do, and it was really, really frightening. And it was a very, very long way. It's 240 kilometres in up to 50 degrees, and you'd think, oh yeah, you've got to be super fit to do that. but actually it's not really about, it wasn't really about fitness. It was entirely about you telling yourself to keep going. And I actually had a thing written on I actually wrote it on my shoe, strangely. I said, pressure is a privilege. And I sometimes think that it's getting them to a point where they realise that you can't take it away, but what you can do is face it and tell yourself to keep going. And I think that's really what you mentioned the 25-year-old, the OF as a 25-year-old, and I think that's quite an important way to how we measure what we're doing.
Yeah, definitely. Are we rounding things up?
I think we're into closing thoughts.
Go on, you close your thoughts first.
Well, I think I just have, actually. I think
it's the easy
I
way
think
out.
I think that the 25-year-old is key, and
Yes.
for me, it's about we have, every child has their own story, and I think for me, the early years are integral. You want that compelling and exciting opening, the character development that comes next, like in any good story or good novel. And the big finish, but throughout all of that, you get these sort of connected themes, and that's the whole journey, potentially from 2 all the way up to 18.
Yeah. And I know, we do go on about it, the individual, and we do say every child creates their own story a lot. And I hope as parents you feel it as well. And you might not be too clear which story your child is in at the moment, but they will get there and they will find it. And I think that's it is the biggest strength that we have, that we genuinely love the time that we spend seeing your children develop. And when they've come through the prep school, these little tots, and then they're suddenly these big hairy beasts about to leave us. We often make sure the prep school staff know what's happening with the children when they have finished, because every stage has contributed to who they become. And of course it's not over, it's just the beginning really in so many ways for what's next. What I was going to read you was a little bit of not a lot, don't worry, a bit of a section from a letter that I received from a parent whose children joined us last year, one into year 12 and one into year 10. And they came a little bit bruised and battered from their previous school, not literally, but they'd had quite a tough time. And this letter, and it's not to sort of blow my trumpet or our trumpet, it's just to sort of a parent's view of how they've seen their child develop that I thought you might enjoy to hear. And it says, from the moment he arrived, you didn't see a problem to fix or see him as the sum of the grades he manages or not to attain, but saw a bright, capable and kind young man who sometimes made silly decisions. He still does that. But had so much to give. You gave him opportunities rather than limitations, responsibilities rather than restrictions, and in doing so allowed him to flourish. Framlingham has not only nurtured his interests, but also given him a sense of purpose and belonging. You restored his confidence, encouraged his leadership, and showed him that he is capable of far more than he had ever been led to believe. We've watched him grow into a young man who is proud of himself, who approaches challenges with resilience and looks people in the eye, and now dares to dream of what his future could hold. And that's just poetry for me to hear that from a parent and the experience that they've had here. And that's what we hope that we will do with every child who comes through the school.
It's a very good closing thought.
And that's it, folks. We'll pause there.